Hi, folks. Thanks so much for being here. We are really excited to welcome tonight's presenter. Cody Daigle-Orians is a writer and asexuality educator living in Columbus, Ohio. They're the creator of Ace Dad Advice, a social media-based asexuality education project designed to support folks exploring asexuality or exploring their sexual orientation. They're the author of the young adult books I Am Ace, Advice on Living Your Best Asexual Life, and the Ace and Arrow Relationship Guide, and they're also a contributor to the 2024 Lambda Literary Award finalist anthology, Being Ace. They were also nominated for a 2023 British LGBTQ Award for Online Influencer, and we are so proud to welcome this evening. Please help us welcome Cody Daigle-Orians.
Thank you. I always forget that the British LGBT thing is there, and anytime I hear myself referred to as an influencer, it makes me cringe a little bit. What a weird thing to call yourself. All right, so thank you all for being here tonight on this cold evening. But I'm happy that you're here. Perfect. So I wrote something special for all of you. This is specifically I wrote for here, and I'm calling it an ASPEC Toolbox for Anxious Times. So in October, I released my second book, The Ace and Arrow Relationship Guide, which is a book I am really, really proud of. It exists because my first book, I Am Ace, only covered relationships in one chapter because that book had other things on its mind. And there was more I thought I had to say about relationships as an ASPEC person, particularly in terms of like practical advice about building relationships that affirm us. So I pitched this as a follow-up to I Am Ace, and my publisher was on board. So the Ace and Arrow Relationship Guide has two purposes. First, it introduces good relationship tools and practices through an ASPEC lens, so that the idea of having and making good relationships is one that we, as ASPEC people, can see ourselves in. We often have to do a lot of calculus to see ourselves in relationship writing aimed at allo folks, and my book was an attempt to correct that. Secondly, the book introduces alternative ASPEC-centered visions of how we can exist in relationship structures, and how we can exist in relationships and what structures those relationships can take so that we, as ASPEC people, can be part of the project of reimagining the ways we relate to love and sex. We don't just have to fit ourselves into relationships as we know them. We can also imagine new forms and new ways to be. And that was what I figured I would be talking to you about tonight. But then, the world changed a little. The first week in November made the future of queer existence a little less certain, a little less stable. And in thinking about coming here and being with you tonight, I felt compelled to talk about ASPEC relationships in a broader sense, our ASPEC relationship with the world. Not just the way the world works on us, but the way that we as ASPEC people can work on the world. And how in our ASPEC-ness and our queerness, we can resist the house on fire around us through some ideas about relationship and community. So we're going to talk about the book, and we're going to talk about relationships, but I want to talk about both of those things in the context of right now, these kind of anxious times, because I am anxious. And ASPEC people I know are also anxious. And I believe very deeply in the idea that the answer to our anxiety is in this room. The answer is us. So in the introduction to the book, I wanted to be clear that I wasn't just talking about romantic relationships when the book says relationship. So this is from the beginning of the book. Within the pages of this book, no one kind of relationship is supreme. No one kind of relationship is considered ideal. All relationships have a seat at this table. This book is never implying that relationship means exclusively paired romantic or sexual connection. Relationship, here, means any meaningful connection we form with other human beings, sometimes in pairs, sometimes in larger units, and sometimes in units so large they encompass people we don't even know halfway across the world. So the book uses relationship to mean all forms of relationships we inhabit. not just interpersonal ones, but also relationships we have with larger human networks, like our communities, our countries, and the world. It was important to me to frame the book as not just a book to find a partner or to have better friendships, but as a book that's useful to find your aspect place in the world among other people, a place that affirms you and sees you in your aspect fullness. We have a relationship with the world. I think that's an important mental shift to make right now. In the final section of the book, I read about why I think the shift is important and what it means to think about the world as a relationship partner. We can feel very small sometimes as we face the vastness of the world, particularly when the world is showing its uglier sides, its cruelty, its ambivalence, its violence, its rage. It's easy to think that we are the insignificant partner in our relationship with the world, that we are unable to ask for what we want, to demand to be seen, to expect to receive care. But everything we expect of the people closest to us is what we can and should expect from the world. And furthermore, we have the power to ask for those things of the world. The mechanics are different. We don't have intimate conversations on the couch with the world. Instead, we use our voice, our vote, our collective action, our civic participation, and when necessary, our civil disobedience. But it's a relationship all the same. And we should always feel that we are in our right and power to ask the world to be the partner we know we deserve. So something that I think keeps us, particularly as queer people, from having these kind of really affirming relationships with the world and with others is a demand on us to be strong, to be resilient, to toughen up and be warriors, to center our hardness in how we interact with the world. And it makes sense, of course, as a protective measure. The world right now is incredibly cruel. And cruelty these days is positioned as a virtue. It's prized. And I'm always thinking about this 2017 HuffPo article. I don't know how to explain to you that you should care about other people. I think it makes sense that we'd be asked to meet cruelty with strength and coldness, that we'd be asked to have thick skin, to be impermeable. This even makes sense, I think, for us as aspec people specifically, because cruelty has always been a feature of our aspec interaction with the world. We're constantly meeting messages of our brokenness, of our fiction, of our lack of validity, our lack of basic humanity all the time. No one is trying to legislate us out of existence yet, but scratch an aspec person and you'll find a history of dehumanization, of being rendered a pathology, of being rendered invisible. But I think there is another way for us to meet the world and to meet other people that's an even more powerful form of resistance, and it's softness. Our softness is an armor. In their essay, Radical Softness as a Boundless Form of Resistance, which is cited in the book, B. Oakley asks us to think about softness as a source of resistance, a boundless source, in making our ways and lives in the world. Those who do not have access to various forms of white, economic, cisgender, or neurotypical privilege are not always able to practice resistance in public space that is made exactly for those privileged bodies. For Oakley, hardness, aggression, impermeable borders, that kind of resistance is a resistance made for people who are not like us. Hardness is fine if the world is built for you, but the world isn't really built for us. So we have to find tools that are better suited for how we exist in the world. And Oakley says softness can be one of those tools. I do not mean to discount the power of numerous people coming together to show the agency of their discount, but I am rather trying to give language to other forms of resistance that do not take space in exactly the same way. We can take the way that we as aspec people exist in our bodies, exist in our relationships, exist in our communities as aspec people, and turn those into forms of resistance that are as equally powerful as a march or a protest. Our vulnerability, our openness, our sharing, our caring for other people, these things in our A-spec ways can be as effective as protest signs or stopping traffic. Our act of existing is an act of resistance. And it's an act that's rooted in softness. Just you saying, I'm here, I exist, I am, in this particular current moment, is an act of boundless resistance. You existing in your interpersonal relationships, in your community, in your workplace, in your country, in the world, is resisting all of the normative forces pushing against us. It reminds me of trans artist Julia Huxtable's famous interview where the interviewer asked her, "What's the nastiest shade you've ever thrown?" And her reply is, "Existing in the world." I love that. Your softness doesn't have to be shade, although it absolutely can be. But the truth of you, your softness, existing in the world, has power. So the first half of the book focuses on 10 relationship tools that are important in building good relationships at all levels. I call this set of tools in the book the relationship toolbox. And the 10th tool in the toolbox is care. So care, as defined in the book and in my work in general, is the practice of extending ourselves in the pursuit of providing for the health, welfare, and protection of someone else. Care is not just a thing we feel. Oh, I care about trans rights. Oh, I care about poverty. Care, in order to be care, needs to be active. Care is something we do. And as much as I love it, if I could, I would change the HuffPo article just slightly to, I don't know how to explain to you that you should care for other people. So I'm going to read a little passage about care from the book that describes what care is and how it operates. Care is the shape our emotions take when they're turned into action. Care is a thing we do. Care takes the things we feel about our relationship partners and manifests them into things our partners can feel. It's why I use the word extend to talk about how we share ourselves in care. We take what's available in us and extend it outward to include our relationship partners. Sometimes that means literally bringing our bodies together in a hug, a kiss, a cuddle, or sex. Sometimes that means using our body to support our partners in making dinner, doing the laundry, planning a fun day trip, sharing a hobby. Sometimes it's simply being actively present for our relationship partners in reassuring, affirming, sharing our vulnerabilities, holding safe space for theirs, or simply just deeply listening. Every kind of relationship we have benefits from care. In every form of connection we share with other people, doing is important. We may undertake different degrees of doing, depending on the nature of the relationship and how we've committed ourselves in that relationship, but there's no relationship if we aren't actively showing up. So care is something that's become really important in my thinking over the years. I've been doing the work I do online in education and in the world here. And it was important for me to include care in the book because I think it is central to having a good relationship of any kind. But right now, care feels even more profoundly urgent, mainly because the people in power only ever seem to practice the opposite of care. Care doesn't just help us build good relationships with our people. It's also a change agent. It's a form of resistance. And this is another section from care about care's function as a piece of resistance. As A-spec folks, along with every other person under the overarching queer umbrella, we move through a world that denies us care. The systems that govern our world don't account for our needs. The messages that pervade our world call us sick, broken, immature, afraid. Laws get made that actively ignore or harm us. The media doesn't depict us or give us equal space to tell our own stories. Our communities only support us when we follow social scripts that aren't made for us. Everywhere we turn in the world sings a single clarion message: the care we have to provide is not for you. To be A-spec and demand care is a revolutionary act. To be A-spec and provide care is a revolutionary act. To stand in the face of a world that refuses to imagine us and say, I am here, I deserve care, and I will still give care in the absence of receiving it, is a powerful assertion of our validity, our worth, and our possibility. And when we care for each other, as fellow A-specs, as fellow queers, as fellow human beings, that care knits together the fabric of a better and more inclusive world. When we don't turn away from each other, when we give of ourselves, and when we graciously receive what others choose to give us, we're building the world we deserve. While I'm not really glad to be in the world right now, I am glad to be in this room right now with you, my people. One of the important frontiers for A-spec folks, particularly in this current environment, is the building of community away from online spaces, the building of in-person systems of care like we see in other parts of the queer community. The majority of our community structure as A-spec people is online. And while online community is really incredible, and for many of us has been life-saving, I am one of those people, I think there is a real need for us to have in-person space to share our softness, to practice care, and feel a sense of community belonging. Because out of that foundation comes systems of care that take care of us in ways beyond affirming our validity. That kind of care could meet our resource needs. That kind of community care could give us lobbying power against policies that harm us. It can keep us safe from violence of all kinds and give us safe space that occupies public space, that lets us take up tangible space in the world. I think these things are going to become more important as queer people face increasingly precarious positions in society. We will increasingly have to rely on us. And we are going to have to bring our consolidated power as A-spec people to the larger queer table. We're going to have to rely on and participate in the larger us. Because ultimately, even though we all have very different experiences as queer people, we are all in this together, even if we're still in the growing pains part of that relationship. In Leslie Feinberg's Transliberation Beyond Pink or Blue, Feinberg shares a talk they gave to the 9th annual Texas Tea Party in Richardson, Texas. So the Tea Party was an annual event in the late 80s and 90s that allowed transgender folks to gather and share community in Texas, which sounds revolutionary today, and I can't even imagine what that was like in the 80s and 90s. So this talk that Feinberg gives is called Allow Me to Introduce Myself, and it was given to 350 straight identifying cross-dressers and their partners. And it's a really beautiful talk that has this reaching quality to parse out really difficult intersectional questions about sex and gender and identity, about how people present their bodies to the world and how the world perceives those bodies. And as the speech is coming to an end, Feinberg offers this on why coalition and community and banding together across different parts of the queer community is so important. The real burning question is, how did we ever find the courage? From what underground spring did we draw our pride? How did each of us make our way in life without a single familiar star in the night sky to guide us to this room where we have at last found others like ourselves? And after so much of ourselves has been injured or left behind as expendable ballast, many of us worry, what do we have left to give each other? Upon what basis will we build something lasting between us? I think we have a whole world to give back to each other. We have the material to create the strong structures of each of our communities while still building the foundation for a coalition of our diversity to fight for common goals. If we want to win our own demands, we need allies. And as we fight for each other's rights, we strengthen our own. I wrote this. I've been reading a lot of Feinberg, but I wrote most of tonight's talk a couple, at the end of last week. And that, in light of the Supreme Court fight about the Tennessee trans ban on gender-affirming care for young people, this notion of finding coalition across different communities, particularly in the queer community, that everyone's fight is our fight and our fight is everyone's fight, feels enormously, enormously valid and important right now. So I wrote about this idea, the notion of like coalition and how we need to gather in spaces and gather across communities right after the election in a piece I shared on Substack. And that piece is called "We Are Bricks, a Post-Election Prayer." And if this meandering thing that I've been speaking this entire time has any thesis, this is close to it. This is from the piece. When I was in college, the Tony Kushner essay collection, Thinking About the Longstanding Problems of Virtue and Happiness, was always nearby, in part for this quote from one of the pieces inside it. "The smallest indivisible human unit is two people, not one. One is a fiction. From such nets of souls, societies, the social world, human life springs." You, whoever you are reading this right now, and I are forming that indivisible human unit, the two of us. From us, everything else is possible, right? I like to think as you read to the end of this, you and I have formed that indivisible human unit. And the shape our unit takes is the shape of a brick. A brick is simple but powerful. It can build houses, towers, streets, cities. You can also hurl it through a window and start a revolution. And in the best of both worlds, a single brick does both. You and I, we can be that brick. We can show others how to form bricks of their own. We can all come together, all the fabulous bricks made of two connected human souls, joined by the joy, pain of this present moment, and we can build something new. Smash a few windows and get through. We will get through. Bricks last. We will last. The last thing I want to read to you, and then we can all talk and share and have a fun time, is one of the final ideas in the book. And it's an assertion of your individual power as an A-spec person to change the world. And every time I'm in a thing and I say, you can change the world, I always feel very ridiculous, like what a grandiose and pompous thing to say. But I wholeheartedly believe that. You have the power to change the world. You have that. And you don't need anything other than your own authenticity to wield that power in the world. We've been told for much of our lives that being who we are as A-spec people is an inadequacy. But who we are is an abundance. And if you leave with anything tonight, read Leslie Feinberg, but also I want you to leave believing that. And if you don't, I will believe that for you. And this is from, I know I'm spoiling the end, which you're not supposed to do, but it's important. And then we can talk. At the center of all of these relationships is you. I hope you recognize the power of that. You and your A-spec experience sit at the heart of a far-reaching web of human relationships that start with your heart and extend as far out into the world as you're willing to assert yourself. And you built that web of relationships. Not only does it speak to how much potential you have to reshape the world in more A-spec affirming ways, but it speaks to what a wonder it is to be A-spec. What a wonder it is for you to be A-spec. Look at what your singular A-spec experience has the potential to create. Whenever you feel that being A-spec is a limitation, think of all the ways you're making a mark on the world through the relationships you steward. Your A-spec identity is a part of that stewardship, and it helps the world learn in small ways and large ways the value and meaning of our ace and arrow lives. So take care and give care. And remember that being A-Spec is an expansion of possibility, not a limiting of it. As always, I'm glad you're here. Thank you. That's the speaking part. But it would be, I wanted to leave as much time as possible for the part that I really like the most, which mirrors what's like being A-Stat on the internet, is getting to talk to you and answer your questions, and not even questions. If you just have things you want to talk about and you want us in the room to talk about it, we should talk about it. So I think the way this should work, because it's important that we hear things, if you have a question or anything, we'll get a mic to you, and you'll ask the question there, and then we will talk. We will build some community here. So come on, don't be shy, please. I'm good with questions.
Hi.
Hi.
It is like so wacky to be here. I don't know when you started your YouTube channel.
It's been a minute.
Okay. But I feel like I remember being like 11, 12 and like watching it. I'm 20 now. So like
It hasn't been that long.
okay.
Oh,
That
dear.
might have been like another online ACE resource, but it is so wild to like have come this far in my journey and have like actually accepted for myself, like, yes, I'm an A-Spec person. And I'm so glad to be able to like be at this event in person and experience all this community with other people. So amazing.
I could not agree with you more. My life as A-Stat seems like there are a ton of people around, but it is literally just me and my dog in my office with me making videos. And my dog looking at me like, what are you doing? I don't get the experience of ACE community very much at all. This is it. This is when I get to do that. And it is always such a cool thing to be in a room with other A-Spec people. Because we don't get that very much, and it's just nice to know that we are live human bodies in space with lives, and then we're all here together. When I went out for I Am Ace, is my favorite thing that's happened at any book event ever. When I went out for I Am Ace, I went to Chicago for a book event in Chicago, and we had a ton of people there. It was like in the queer neighborhood, so lots of people there, and the Q&A started, and a woman in the back raised her hand, and she was like, "Hi, I have no idea who you are." Which is like, okay, good start. She's like, "But my friend said that you were Ace and wrote a book about being Ace." And she was like in her mid-30s. She's like, "I have never met another Ace person. And my friend thought I might meet an Ace person there." And there were like 60 of them in the room with her. And she had the most amazing experience that she met other Ace people, and we had a really fun time. It was a blast. But that's like deeply meaningful to me, that me making silly videos made that possible for her, to give her that moment. But this is always really rejuvenating for me to be in rooms with you all, and you should keep being in rooms together. That's the magic. Keep being in rooms together. There are rooms here that you can use. And it can be about anything, really. It can just be like a question about anything, really.
Hi. I said I was going to grill you.
I'm good. I'm ready. I'm prepared.
All right. So, I guess I'm just wondering how you're going to, or how to kind of address the societal thing, because obviously, I think I said before, we just got married. So there's a lot of that. Obviously, you can hide behind purity culture for some of your more conservative family members and friends. And now it's like, okay, so tell me about all these incredibly intrusive things about your life. And, it's just, how do you address that feeling of like being a married person, but going, that's not important, or I mean, like, is not, it's, I guess, yeah, just being a-spec and being married is, we look at sex differently than an allo couple or even an ace-allo couple, or however, like, it's just kind of like the weird societal pressure of like, I have nothing to hide behind now that I can use as, look, a distraction. So, yeah.
I mean,
I don't know, hold on to it.
no, what I would, and this is like for broadly as well. Yeah. As an aspec person, people do tend to feel that they are entitled to ask questions about things that they would never ask anyone else. And that used to make me feel a way. I used to sort of take on the awkwardness and inappropriateness of that. I would like take that in and internalize that and like hold on to it. All you have to do really is like make a clear boundary with those people, even those people who are close. Someone, that's just not a thing I'm going to talk about. And I don't really care how you feel about that. If you don't like that, well, then you're going to have to sit in that, because that's all we're doing. I'm not going to apologize for saying I don't want to talk about my personal life with you or how my relationships work. So I'm polyamorous, so I have multiple partners. People are very curious what's going on there and will ask enormously invasive questions about it. And I just, no, I'm not talking about that with you. That's inappropriate. That's not something I want to talk about with you. And you don't have to say that's inappropriate. You don't have to like call them out. No, I don't want to talk about that. Did you see Wicked? Like, that's all you got to do. And ultimately, don't let that the someone else's inappropriateness or someone else's invasiveness sit in you. I had a boss who used to say, because we had a crazy super boss, who made our lives very challenging, and she was like, "Don't sign for the package. She can deliver it, but you don't have to sign for it. They can bring whatever they want to you. You don't have to sign for it, and you don't have to bring it into the house. It can sit on the porch. Let it stay on the porch, and if they have feelings about it, they have feelings about it."
Thank you.
Yeah.
Because it's like I hate being called a prude, and I'm like, I'm not a prude. I just don't want to talk about it.
That's their problem, and that's not you. And also, not hanging out with you anymore, person. Not hanging out with you anymore. Ugh, yeah.
What has the process of working with publishers on this topic been like?
So my publisher's been really great. The first book came about because they reached out to me. They saw my work online and was like, "Hey, that's interesting. Would you be interested in turning that into a book?" And they were interested because they noticed that there was an absence of ace and arrow literature on shelves, and they were reaching out to people. So when my book came out, when I Am Ace came out, there were like 4 other books. Like if your ace shelf grew exponentially, it's because of my publisher. So they were very supportive of the idea of creating nonfiction work about ace lives through a variety of lenses. And mine was writing a YA book. That was going to be my target. The book did well, and they liked the process of working with me. So when I pitched this one, they were eager to sign on. And I think out of probably like everybody who wrote that first set of books, my work has probably the most like could make multiple things out of it. So I've had a really good experience working with them. They have not censored anything. The only thing they censored or asked me to take out was a reference to Adrienne Rich, because of Adrienne Rich's like issues around sort of there was controversy sometimes around Adrienne Rich's work because it was sort of transphobic toward the end of her life. So they just asked me to take out the mention of Adrienne Rich. That's the only thing that they've asked me to do. Otherwise, everything was allowed to stay. And they've just been super supportive and let me write what I wanted to write, which is great.
I'm just sort of curious, how with like publishing, how does it get classified like what genre the book is? Because I noticed that this book, when I got it, it like the sticker on it was like psychology and self-help, and I was like, that's interesting.
So they decide that, and I look at it and go, "Oh, well, okay." um, yeah, I think for my publisher in particular, there are, as a publishing imprint, they have certain like niches that they publish in. So it's just sort of slotting our books into things that are part of their existing category, and also where is this going to best reach people, or where might this most resonate with people? I get why this is self-help, because it's a relationship book and it does have relationship advice and it does all that stuff, even though it does a lot of other things too. I get it, but it is sort of weird. I call it YA. I was more insistent this time that it was more specifically spoken about as a book that was written for YA audiences, because I got so many Goodreads reviews of like, this, for I Am Ace, they were like, I Am Ace, this reads like a 101. Yes, it is. That is its function. You correctly identified the book as it exists. So frustrating. So I was like, can we just make a bigger deal out of that part this time? That it is a YA book, even though many adults have also gotten a lot out of it.
This might be a little bit more off topic and I guess a little insider baseball, but when buying a book, is it better, like what's the best way to like support the author in that aspect? Like, do you have like direct links that like more of the, cut goes to you? Do you go through like your local friendly bookstore? What's like the best way to just like support you and make sure that, you're getting your fair share as an author?
There's no way that like gets me more money unless we storm the offices, and we'll storm the offices. That's what we're gonna do as a group. What I encourage people to do is to use independent bookstores, because one, I love independent bookstores. They are magical places and they're essential parts of the community, and also, support cool people who are doing good things instead of that guy. Even though the book is maybe a little cheaper from that guy, support your independent bookstore, because you're not only helping me out, but you are also keeping a business in a community that's vital alive. And I think things are going to get harder for indie bookstores coming down the pike. So making sure those people are supported. Yeah. And also libraries, like ask your library to get a copy of the book. If it doesn't, ask the branch to get it. And because that also is, I think, that's helpful too. I love the notion that the book is in places where people can always go and get it. Unless it should be checked out all the time. I do think it should be very hard to get, because it should be checked out all the time. I'm kidding.
It's in the pipeline.
So I'm not entirely certain where the question is in here, but I'd like there to be one. So a lot of my existence seems to be like passing, like as a straight allo woman maybe, but because then I don't have to talk about anything else, like who preferred partners would be, etc. So I don't know. It's sort of like, I heard you say you just got married. Congratulations. It's easier not to date. Is where I come into a lot of stuff. So, like I said,
You've got like string passing here, so it feels weird.
Also came into this with, I hadn't heard the term asexuality is applied to human sexuality until I was in my 30s. So I love that people are getting this younger and figuring it out all in one go, but.
Yeah, like major shout out to the Youngs. Thank you, Youngs. Yeah, y'all are the best. I came out late. I came out even later. I didn't really recognize I was ace until I was 41, and it was because of Tumblr. Tumblr. A thing that I talk about, like what motivates just my work, is knowing that the Tumblr post that helped me figure out myself was probably written by some very young person was sharing their life experience on Tumblr, and that helped me as a 41-year-old adult know myself. So I just feel like my work is always, I'm trying my best to pay back that debt of gratitude to the Youngs. You help me see myself, I'm gonna help you have a future. And see a future for yourself. That's our deal. In terms of like passing, a similar thing happens for me too, because I am, but like I pass as sort of like boring queer. That's kind of what I pass for, just because I am in relationships with just boring old cis gay guys. Nothing fun there. But yeah, I get it. Like there are assumptions that I exist in the world in a very specific way that isn't how I operate in the world at all. It does feel weird. Like, I agree with you. It's sort of a weird place knowing. And a lot of A-Spec people have the same reality. Like, it's very easy for us to just not participate in the mess. We don't have to. We can just opt out of the mess. I used to opt out of the mess. I didn't start doing anything public as an asexual person until 3 years after I came out. For the first 3 years, I was like, well, we don't need to talk about this. This is fine. It's fine. People know that I'm queer. That's fine. We're not going to deal with that. Now it feels more important for me to be more out, like aggressively out all the time. Yeah, I don't know if that was like an answer to anything. I hope it was. I encourage you to be more aggressively out if you feel like it. This is a good time for it.
Going off of that, it makes me think about the balance of identities that you can put away and ones that you can choose to be visible about. Like, I can't put race away, but I can put being ace away. Ooh, that rhymed. And so it's one of those things where I'm like, ooh, there's a lot of yuckiness about the things that I can't put away already, but I want to feel pride in the communities that I'm invisibly a part of. So how do you kind of walk that line?
Give yourself the grace to just do what you can do. I think there's a lot of pressure on queer people in general, but also like for in the ace community. There does seem to be like some pressure to sort of be out and do the thing because there's so little representation and there's so little of us. So get out there and do it. Teach people at every turn. And that's just not everybody's calling. That's not everyone's skill set. That's not what everyone excels at. Give yourself the grace to be as much of an advocate in that way, or to be as present as you feel comfortable doing, and know that that is enough because you are doing what you can do. You are being who you can be. There are others of us who have more capacity to do the rah-rah thing and get up and write the books and do that. And like some of us can do that. And there are great people who are online, who are doing all the education work all the time and being very out there. They can do that. Let them do that. Just give yourself the grace to, and you can even like dip in and out too. You know, if you're in I can do it now, and you feel like backing off, that's also fine. Last year, I took almost a month off it was right around the holidays. I was just like, nope, this is not the time that I'm ready to be a public ace person. So I didn't post for a month. I didn't make content for a month. And I watched YouTube, a lot of YouTube. And it felt great. Then you can dive back into it. But yeah, just do what you can do, whatever that is. And it's more than enough.
this just isn't really a question, but I feel like just like hearing what people are saying, I feel like I also like for a while was kind of like, oh, like I need to like, well, first of all, like passing as like a like person in like a hetero relationship. I started to feel after I realized I was ace, like feel weird that like people were just like assuming that I was like this straight woman. And that really bothered me for a while, but I feel like lately I've been like able to like, especially after like seeing so many like affirming things through like ace dad advice and like reading other books and listening to podcasts and just like focusing on me. I feel like now I'm sort of like, for a while I was like stressed about like coming out to people, and which now I'm kind of like, that feels dumb. Like no one should have to come out to anybody. But I feel like it's been really cool to just like live like just be myself a lot and like sort of identify as queer, but not like there's a lot of people in my life who I haven't like specifically been like, yes, I'm queer and I'm ace, but I'm just like not hiding it anymore. And it feels really cool. Like there are some people in my life who like know and they're like super supportive and affirming. And I feel like the rest of the people, I'm just like, I don't like, I'm just gonna be me, and like you can think what you want. So I don't know, just go be yourself.
Like, yes. Yeah. What I really appreciate about that is sort of hearing you talk about like that process of giving yourself the space to take that trip. That's I think an important idea too. Like, I think there is an inherent pressure that once you figure something out about yourself, there is the pressure to tell all the people about it and be that thing in public. That doesn't have to be the trajectory. That can be a much slower process. It can start with you and then branch out to one or two people, and then you can slowly let that part of yourself be part of the world without ever denying that part of yourself, or you're not denying it. You're living it, just slowly letting it grow into itself. I think that's very awesome. Also, it's enormously important, and I'm not saying people our age, because I'm not going to dare say that you're my age, because I am old. But for people who are adults, it is really great for us to be visible, because there are so few of us that are visible in that way. And it's awesome that you are in whatever your circle is, being a visible ace adult, because it shows maybe a hidden ace young person around there that a future is possible. And that's a very worthwhile thing.
Can I ask a follow-up question?
Yeah.
Earlier you were saying that you feel like you owe it to like young people that you are where you are now. And I'm curious, because I feel like I think of you as like an ace elder, but like, do you feel like that, or do you feel like, I don't know.
I have a complicated relationship. No, I mean, yes, I recognize that. Yes, I am. I mean, I'm almost 50, and when you look at like ACE demographics around on the ACE survey or things like that, people who are in my age group, it is an enormously small part of the self-identifying ACE community. So yes, am I old? No. Am I an elder in the community? Yes. And sometimes that's just weird, because I have just personal stuff about being called old. Like, I have a thing about that. Okay, a funny story about being considered old. I've kind of looked like this for a really long time. When I was 35, I was diagnosed with kidney cancer. It's a funny story about cancer. On the day that I was diagnosed, my partner at the time and I went into the hospital because I had blood in my urine, so I was like, well, what's up with that? And they did a CT scan on me, and that's how they found it. But they gave me contrast, which makes you throw up sometimes, and I was one of those people that made it throw up. So this poor nurse in this room, I'm like throwing up the contrast from the thing, and I'm having like a miserable time. And the doctor comes in and is like, hey, you have kidney cancer. So that happened. The next thing that happened, because my partner at the time left the room because he was not good with the throwing up part, you have kidney cancer. The nurse says to me, would you like me to tell your son it's okay to come back in the room? Yeah. So I was like, hey, you have cancer. Old. So I have complicated feelings about being old, but I happily take on the role of elder. When I first came out as gay when I was 18, and it was gay elders made it possible for me to get through that experience growing up gay in the South, or what I thought was gay in the South. So I happily take on that position in that role. Even though like we're peers, we're peers, but because you maybe were out longer than I have been. I'm still relatively new.
I'm pretty new too.
Believe it or not, yeah.
I'd say we have time for one more, and then we can move on to book signing.
So I never like came out to people, but I threw a big old like Ace Pride pin on my work lanyard, and I've had so many great conversations that I didn't expect to have, given what percentage of the population is Ace. But though, and I was like, should I keep it there because I'm like, do people really need to know this about me? But then I had like a middle schooler come up to me and be like, oh, yeah, me too. And then they like downloaded a bunch of personal information to me. But I was like, I am glad that you got to see this and reaffirm it. So now I felt great when I saw your pen the first time. Yeah. And thank you for keeping doing what you're doing with the your online presence.
Me and the TikToks. Yeah. Just for everyone here, know that my inbox or wherever if you follow me, it's always open to say hi and to just check in, because we've shared this community space, so we're friends now. We can. I would love for there to continue to be community with people that I get to meet out in the world. So we are friends because of that. Like say hi. Say hi anytime, or if you ever have a question or need some support of some kind, especially now. Happy to fill that space and to be on your team whenever you need that. So, and thank you for being here tonight. It was really fun.